Canada produces what the world needs: sustainable and affordable energy, critical minerals, forestry, and agriculture. We do this with the highest environmental, human rights, and labor standards, more than almost any jurisdiction in the world. Canadian agriculture represents some of the most efficient, sustainable, and innovative producers in the world. Canada should be the envy of the world. But the question is, why aren't we? Well, a recent survey of farmers answers that question. An annual survey of Canadian farmers asked them their number one stressor. In the past, that number one stressor for farmers was weather. But the most recent survey, and for the first time, the number one source of anxiety wasn't weather, commodity prices, or succession planning. Well, what was it? Government regulations. The Liberal NDP government is crippling Canadian producers with the cost of carbon tax, fertilizer tariffs, a capital gains tax hike, fertilizer reduction policies, plastic bans, and front-of-pack labeling, just to name a few. These policies have consequences, and those consequences are devastating. Fertilizer expenses for Canadian farmers increased 54% to $12 billion. Commercial feed expenses for livestock producers increased by 21% to $12 billion. This is directly attributable to the carbon tax. Canadian farmers are paying on average $150,000 in carbon taxes every year. For example, Prairie Gold Potatoes in Alberta is paying $540,000 a year, Mountain View Poultry $180,000 a year, and a grain farmer in Ontario is paying $400 a day just to dry their grain. These increase every time the Liberal NDPs increase the carbon tax. And they want to quadruple that tax, making farming in Canada uncompetitive and unsustainable. The real question is why? Why are Trudeau and Singh attacking Canadian farmers who are the most efficient and sustainable in the world? Why is the NDP Liberal government ignoring the facts? Well, the facts show Canadian farm families should be incredibly proud of what they have accomplished. Did you know that according to the study by the Global Institute for Food Security, a ton of Canadian wheat could travel around the world 3.5 times before it has the same carbon footprint as wheat grown in Europe? The carbon footprint of a ton of canola grown in Saskatchewan is 67% lower than any other jurisdiction in the world. Our farmers have reduced their emissions by 50% over the last 2 decades, while still increasing production and yield. Modern agriculture practices have also helped reduce carbon emissions by 80 billion tons and reduce diesel fuel usage by more than 200,000 liters per year. Let's put this in a global perspective. On average, 28% of a country's emissions are a result of agriculture. But in Canada, agriculture emissions are just 8%, or 2/3 the global average. Think about that. Canada is responsible for 1.6% of global emissions, and just 8% of that 1% comes from agriculture in Canada. Farmers have done this not because they've been forced to by punishing carbon taxes. They have done this over decades of innovation because it is the right thing to do to conserve their water, improve soil health, and protect delicate ecosystems. Yet in just 1 year, Alberta farmers paid $20 million in carbon taxes. By 2030, they will pay $200 million in carbon taxes alone. This relentless financial strain threatens not only the livelihoods of these farm families, but also stifles the immense potential of agriculture and agri-food.
I know there's a lot of anxiety with the impending tariffs from President Trump and the impact they could have on Canadian agriculture. That's why it is so important to have a Prime Minister who puts Canada first, who will have focused and strategic retaliatory tariffs, diversify our farming markets right here at home and around the world.
I believe our agriculture and agri-food industries play an integral role in helping Canada regain our respect on the global stage. Canada can and will play a pivotal role to not only feed Canadians, but help feed the world, supplying the globe with a sustainable, affordable, and nutritious food produced right here on Canadian soil. We must choose the right path, and that comes with the right leadership. We must talk about agriculture in terms of food production and food security. And the foundation of food production in Canada must be common sense policy based on competitive regulatory tax regime, access to global markets, a reliable supply chain, and science-based policies and regulations. The Liberals are failing on every one of these critical measurements. Canadians cannot stomach more punishing Liberal NDP policy. The Liberal NDP policies have already forced 2 million Canadians to food bank in a single month and pushed food inflation 36% higher in Canada than the United States. Unleashing Canadian food production is critical to our economy and addresses food insecurity. To do that, a Conservative government will recognize farm families for their environmental achievements, reduce regulatory red tape, and axe the carbon tax to ensure Canadian food production and the family farm are economically viable. When it comes to reducing emissions, invigorating our economy, and feeding Canadians and the world, Our farm families are not the problem. The facts clearly show they are the solution.